There has never been a more confusing time to be a WoW player. If you haven't played WoW in a few years, you might think you just log in and play World of Warcraft. Well, that is not exactly the case. There's a lot of different versions of this game for you to play. You've got Retail WoW, which is modern WoW set in the Midnight expansion. You have Classic Progression, which is Mists of Pandaria. You have the Burning Crusade, which is an Anniversary Realm. You have Classic Era, which is basically the 2019 version of Classic, frozen in time after Naxxramas. You have Hardcore, which is One Life Vanilla WoW, and you have Season of Discovery, which was the last season that Blizzard did, ultimately being an experimental testing ground for a bunch of stuff that was never in the game, and it's kind of at its end at this point. But each version is basically targeting a completely different type of player. And in this video today, that is what we're going to go over. I want to break down every major version of WoW so you can realistically figure out which version you should jump in and play today. What is each version going to be for, right? Who are those players that want to play that version? What makes that version special? How populated it is? And most importantly, which version should you yourself actually be playing? So without further ado, let's dive on in. We're going to start off with Retail WoW. This is the modern MMO, the main version of World of Warcraft. This is currently, like I said before, set in the Midnight expansion. This is the version where the most modern systems, highest level of polish, and the most content is overall. This is where Blizzard is putting the majority of its development resources until Classic came into the picture. So who is this for? Players who want the most modern MMO experience. Now, you got to remember, if you played WoW 20 years ago, Retail or Modern WoW is a completely different game today. This is going to be for people who enjoy Mythic Plus, which is competitive 5-man content, competitive raiding, competitive PvP, tons of collecting, transmogging, collecting all different sets of gear from all over the world so that you can showcase them on your character, collecting mounts, achievements, and a way more streamlined and modern class design with definitely some faster paced combat. It's also best for people who don't necessarily care about the old school design of WoW. If you have nothing tying you to that classic design, Retail WoW might actually be for you, right? Now, what makes Retail WoW special? What makes Retail WoW special is the massive amount of content, right? You have tons and tons of content. It's extremely polished when it comes to combat. It doesn't feel like the WoW you remember from 20 years ago. It feels definitely more of a action RPG style of combat, but there is a huge variety of endgame activities, modern conveniences, and it's just very easy to jump into that kind of content. It's the most advanced version of WoW there actually is, right? Some would say it's extremely bloated, but the people who love Retail, and they keep playing it, right? The downside to Retail, though, is that it can feel overwhelming, right? If you haven't played WoW in 20 years and you're jumping in now, there's some catch-up mechanics. They've definitely simplified a lot of things. It doesn't have, a full 20 years worth of bloat, but it's definitely a bit overwhelming with all the systems and currencies that are in the game. The world is a lot less dangerous than Classic, and leveling isn't really the main focus of Retail WoW. It's more focused on the endgame. The leveling is done very quickly. So some players feel that the social aspect of the game is much weaker than Classic. As for population, though, this is the largest overall ecosystem for WoW. However, the population can fluctuate dramatically depending on the point in that expansion cycle, right? Obviously, the population spikes at the beginning of an expansion, spikes towards the end of an expansion, the release of a new one, and it kind of, peters out to a nice medium in the middle ground there. Between major releases, the game can definitely feel much quieter, although it is still very much alive. Next up, let's talk about Mists of Pandaria Classic. This is the current progression version of Classic WoW. The WoW that came out in 2019 has now ended up in Mists of Pandaria, and the future of this is unknown. We're probably going to get some answers when BlizzCon comes around in about 6 weeks, September 12th, September 13th. But right now, we don't know the future of this expansion. But either way, who is this expansion for? This is for the players who enjoy Classic, but want more content than like Vanilla and the Burning Crusade. This is for people who love an older class design compared to Retail, older talent trees, a little bit more of a challenging leveling experience, in that Classic style of character progression and raiding. It has some more developed, endgame systems than the Burning Crusade and Vanilla, and it's particularly good for people who think Vanilla is a little bit too slow, but Retail is way too modern. Now, what makes Mists of Pandaria special is that Pandaria is often considered one of WoW's strongest expansions. It has great class design. The classes are a lot more intricate and fun to play than they are in vanilla, but not as crazy as they are in retail. It has excellent raids, challenge modes, scenarios, pet battles, the Timeless Isle, strong PvP if you enjoy PvP, and a very complete overall, WoW classic experience, but not as classic as vanilla. This is an important thing to note here. This is arguably the bridge between old WoW and modern WoW. It has many of the systems that made later WoW expansions successful, but still retains a lot of the old school identity and grit. As for population, Mists of Pandaria's population is extremely low right now just because like I said before, we don't know the future of this expansion. Is it going to move into Warlords of Draenor? Are they going to turn it into an Era realm? We just don't have those answers yet. So there is still a decent amount of people raiding on there and PvPing and having a good time, but it is one of the smaller versions of Classic WoW that you can play. Next up, let's talk about the Burning Crusade anniversary. This is the nostalgia powerhouse, right? This is what everyone knows and loves. The 20th anniversary progression servers have now moved into the Burning Crusade. These were servers that Blizzard launched a couple of years ago, starting back over again in vanilla, that have now moved on into the Burning Crusade. This is the modern re-release of one of the most beloved expansions in WoW's history. Now, who is this for? Players who think vanilla WoW is great but want, more class design, more races like Blood Elves and Draenei, flying mounts, a little bit more endgame content. You have Karazhan, Gruul, Magtheridon's Lair, Serpent Shrine Cavern, and Tempest Keep out all right now. And in just 3 short weeks, you're going to be, able to raid Black Temple and Serpent Shrine Cavern. It's great for players who want the classic experience but feel like vanilla is a little bit too restrictive. And TBC is definitely a little bit more focused on endgame than vanilla, right? You level 60 to 70, and then that is pretty much it. It's great for players who want that classic experience but feel like vanilla is just a little bit too slow and you want to just be playing the most modern version of classic there is, right? The one that everyone is on. That's where TBC comes in. So what makes the Burning Crusade special? The transition from Azeroth to Outland is awesome, right? It's pretty iconic. You get to level up all the way to level 70. You unlock your flying mount. There's heroic dungeons, which are in their pre-nerf state, so they're still not very easy. They're kind of hard. You have attunements to all the raids. Again, Blizzard in this version of TBC has made it so that attunements are account-wide, which really helps quite a bit. And you have smaller raid sizes. You have 10-man Karazhan, 10-man ZA when that comes out, and the rest of the raids are all 25-mans. And some of the most iconic raids in WoW's history, like Black Temple, Serpent Shrine Cavern, Tempest Keep, Karazhan, people love those raids. And in TBC, you definitely have a little bit of a stronger sense of class identity as well. The classes are a little bit more fun to play than in vanilla WoW. As for the population, the Burning Crusade Classic Anniversary is the highest populated version of Classic WoW there currently is out on the market. This is where most of the players are because it is just current, right? We don't know if it's moving into Wrath of a Lich King or if they're going to turn it into a TBC era realm. Again, we'll probably get this information at BlizzCon, but this is extremely poppin'. There is a lot of people out leveling in the world. There's tons of guilds and pug raids going on. So if you're looking for like a more nostalgic, closer to vanilla experience that's extremely alive, the Burning Crusade is going to be for you. Next up, let's talk about Classic Era. This is the vanilla experience. This is basically vanilla WoW frozen in time. The servers that came out in 2019 after Naxxramas had come out and they've progressed through all of the raids, those players are in that point in time. If you log on to a Classic Era realm, it is progressed past Naxxramas, and you can level a character on a PvE or PvP realm. The realms are actually grouped as well, so there's not really many issues with finding players. There's people actively leveling, running dungeons, running raids, and there is just a bunch of stuff going on there as well. Not as big as the Burning Crusade, but it has its player base, right? So who is this for? This is going to be for the vanilla purists. This is for the players who believe vanilla WoW was the best version of the game, and the people who want to enjoy that slow progression leveling, the world PvP, professions, dungeons, the classic raids like Molten Core, Onyxia, BWL, Naxxramas, AQ, all of that stuff, and the original class design, right? That is some stuff that has not been altered or touched. It is the original class design, and the Dark Portal is not open, so you are capped at level 60, and Naxxramas is the last raid that you will be doing in Classic Era. Now, what makes it special? What makes Classic Era special is this is arguably the most World of Warcraft version of WoW. This is the version that everyone remembers if you've been playing this game for 20 years. The world itself is the content. Getting from level 1 to 60 is a massive journey, which for most people can take at least a couple of months. Your professions take a lot to level, they matter, gear matters, gold matters, and the social connections you make matter as well. The downside: this is vanilla WoW, so it has that very old class balance and design, meaning there really isn't that much balance. If you want to dominate in world PvP, you're going to play, a rogue, and you're just going to have the time of your life. But there's some specs that are arguably just extremely weak, and that is how vanilla WoW is. And if that's what you're looking for, and you're looking for that old school experience, look no further, because Classic Era is going to be where you want to play. Now, as for the population on Classic Era is absolutely, by all means, not a dead thing at all. It has a very small population of about 10 to 20,000 raid loggers. That's people just raiding, but there's a lot of people who play Classic Era just leveling classes and world PvPing. So there's arguably at least double that amount of players on Classic Era. So if you wanted to play there, it is alive, and you can make a character on there and play through that vanilla WoW experience with no issues whatsoever. And remember, like I said, they have grouped all these realms together. So while you're out in the world, you're going to be seeing people from other realms as well. So it's kind of nice for balancing out the population. Next up on the list, let's talk about Classic WoW Hardcore. This is the most intense way to play WoW. This is vanilla or Classic Era WoW, but with one life. And you can even add another modifier on it and make yourself a self-found character if you wanted to. Self-found means you cannot trade with other players, you can't use the auction house or the mailbox system. So your character isn't, completely funded by itself. You can't do any outside trading if you wanted to add that modifier as well. But most people just opt to play hardcore, which is just one life WoW. So who is this for? This is for players who want actual danger. You want some sort of a challenge. Maybe you're a veteran, maybe you're a new player and you just want to feel really immersed in the world. This is the way you're going to do it. This is for people who are bored of the normal WoW progression, players who kind of enjoy maybe like survival games, roguelikes, high stakes, challenging things, the thrill of just losing everything if you were to die. Now, what makes it special? What makes hardcore special is that death matters. Your character is going to permanently die when you die. If you die, your character is gone. He is no longer available. But again, a nice change that Blizzard has made is that you can now transfer your hardcore characters that have died over to the Classic Era realms if you wanted to continue playing that character. You can no longer play him on the hardcore realms. These are specific realms for hardcore characters, but you could transfer him after they die over to the Classic Era realms if you wanted to continue that character. So suddenly now every elite quest matters, you're terrified of everything, every dungeon matters, every pull in that dungeon matters, and even disconnecting can be terrifying. The big difference between Classic Era and Hardcore is Classic Era asks, how far can you progress, where Hardcore asks, how long can you survive? One big thing I want to mention about Hardcore is the community, right? Hardcore creates some of the strongest social interactions in WoW. Players help each other out, players celebrate character milestones together, and deaths actually become stories. You become attached to your character in a way that normal WoW doesn't always create. There are some downsides though, right? Character death can be devastating. If you spent 2 months leveling to 60, jump in your first, endgame dungeon to farm some pre-raid bisque gear, and die, you just lost all of that time that you invested, and you're going to be one of two types of players. You're going to either log off and unsub, or you're going to immediately create another character and go again. The population is a little bit more fragmented, but it's very alive. You're not going to have issues finding dungeons out in the world while you're leveling or any of that stuff, because players are just constantly dying and coming back and making new characters. As for the overall population of Hardcore, I would say this is more of a low to medium pop. However, it fluctuates. There's times where Hardcore is way more poppin' and there's a lot of people on there, and there's other times where it sits at like a medium pop. But either way, there's always people to play with because it is a game mode that some people just main Hardcore and don't touch any other versions of WoW. So if this is something that interests you, I would definitely give it a go. Hardcore to me has always been one of the most immersive experiences in WoW. If you're not looking to get into the endgame raiding scene as much and you just want to level a character and immerse yourself in the world and the journey, that's going to be the version you want to check out. Now, last but certainly not least, we have Season of Discovery. This was the what-if version of Classic, right? This was the experimental, seasonal version of Classic WoW that Blizzard launched a few years ago. The servers are still alive, and there's still some people playing on there, but it is not the most recent and newest thing, because it's very different than how Classic WoW has ever been in the past. So, who is Season of Discovery for? Season of Discovery is for players who love vanilla WoW, but wish that Blizzard would have experimented with it. Well, they did. This is for the players who want new class builds, new abilities, new ways to play the game, and just overall, like I said, a more experimental version of Classic. There's a rune system where you can engrave your chest or your head or your legs, different pieces of your gear, to give your character new abilities and ultimately change the way that they can play. Warlocks can tank, rogues can tank, shamans can tank. There is a bunch of different stuff in there. Mages can even heal in Season of Discovery. So what makes it special? Season of Discovery was essentially Blizzard asking, what if we took vanilla and changed the rules? This is, one of my favorite versions of the game. I'm not currently playing it because I played through the entire thing. It's in its last phase and it's not getting any more development. And one day it will eventually shut down. But that is what it was, right? The roles that all these new classes were able to take on, the new abilities that every class got, made it so much fun to play. It was like, it almost felt like an official private server version of Classic WoW, where Blizzard was just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, what people enjoyed. It's very different. It did not try and recreate vanilla, to a T. It was kind of more like a vanilla WoW remix. And it represents one of the biggest what if Blizzard made Classic Plus experiments that we've ever gotten. And with all the talk of Classic Plus probably being announced this year at BlizzCon, Season of Discovery has seen a little bit of a resurgence due to, streamers running an event right now where people are leveling and going through all the phases and the raids and all that stuff. So as for the population, I would say the population on Season of Discovery is pretty low to medium currently right now, and probably will just kind of fizzle out and get lower and lower as time goes on. Like I said, it's not a version of the game that's being developed currently, so it's kind of hard to justify putting in a ton of time on there. However, if you're someone who never got to experience it and you just want to level and have a good time while leveling with new talents and abilities and runes and all that good stuff, I wouldn't hesitate to go make a character on Season of Discovery, as long as you know that it's seasonal and it's temporary, and at any moment they could potentially shut those servers down. So all in all, the biggest strength of WoW right now is also kind of its biggest weakness. There's something for everybody, right? You have modern WoW, which is retail. You have vanilla WoW, which is era. You have TBC, which is anniversary, potentially moving into Wrath soon. You have MOP, which is the classic progression realms, like kind of in the middle between retail and classic, although probably at its end of life, and we're not sure about the future there. And you have hardcore, which is just a perfect evergreen version of vanilla WoW, where you can kind of just infinitely level characters and have a new experience every single time. And then you have Season of Discovery, which is the experimental version of Classic, where if you just wanted to test, something and see how fun it would be to tank on a rogue or a warlock, you can go level a character on there. But the player base is divided across all of these versions. Instead of one massive WoW community, right, where, you have multiple communities split amongst all these versions. So picking the right version for what you want to experience does make a big difference in how much fun you're going to have, right? There's a lot of talk always about World of Warcraft is World of Warcraft Classic dying, this, that, the other thing. It is absolutely not. Every version of the game has a population on it. You can play any version you want right now. Yes, some versions are more popular than others, but that's pretty much just how WoW always goes. It ebbs and flows depending on the newest announcement or the newest version of Classic or the newest retail patch. That is just how the game, functions and works, almost on kind of like a seasonal model. And again, there's talks of Classic Plus coming soon at BlizzCon, so we're looking forward to that, and I can't wait to see what Blizzard does next. But I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, like the video, follow me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/hammerdance, and subscribe to the channel if you guys love Classic WoW just as much as me. But anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. I'll see you all in the next one.